Okay, there. Here we go. So I've known Leah for over 30 years. She was this most amazing special ed teacher. And when the kids came from her program up to the high school, they were ready to be students. It was amazing. Um, she taught one room K8. And so what I want to know is, how did you create a program with grades 1 through 8 in one room, meeting students where they are?
Actually, Helena, I think it's how you created your theater program. I took each student for where they were at. It was totally student-centered. I spent a lot of time listening and developing what they call formative assessment. I would take inventories. In fact, when the student would come to me, the first thing I would do is take an inventory of the things the student liked from his parents, the things the student didn't like, and the types of rewards, like whether it was a game or they didn't have videos back then, an outdoor activity, anything that the student liked. And I would incorporate the grade level, what they would call today standards, to that student, the best teaching practices, all of those things. And I would, back in the day, they didn't have those things. So I would work closely with the regular education teacher to make sure I was teaching all the academics that that student could handle given that student's challenges. But we'd be in a one-room schoolhouse. I'd have kindergarten through 8th grade, and I would set it up. We had a class meeting where the 8th graders would be the teacher. We'd play games where the 8th graders would set up the learning goals for the kindergartners. We'd make art activities where the 8th graders would teach. I would talk to the older kids, tell them, well, how do you think we're going to make this art activity? How are we going to do this? What do you think? And I go, okay, yeah, that works. And I would start writing it down on a big chartboard. And so they would use that, and then I would have them read it to the kindergartners. Yeah, they were doing their reading skills and their speech and language and their social emotional while they were teaching the kindergartners, because most of the students that I had, I would say 90% of them, whether they had a dyslexia type learning disability or they were on the autistic spectrum or something, the Asperger spectrum, they all had self-esteem issues and a lot of emotional disorders because they'd been spending their time in the regular classroom comparing themselves and going, oh my gosh, I can't do this, I can't do this. But they could do it, but they needed an individualized program. That said, Helena, I also focused on all of their strengths. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but I usually had the best athlete in the school, the best actress in the school, the best artist in the school, the
Interesting.
best secretary, administrative assistant, helper in the school. My students would dress up like Clifford when the book fair would come. They were always the best. They would go to the kindergarten and read books to them. So it wasn't just about building a tool bag for them and targeting the skills that they needed. It was also about thinking about the school community and teaching the school community to find ways that my students could thrive and show their strengths in the school
Wow.
community. In fact, there was one teacher, and I'll just say she was a witch with a capital B, and it was back in the day. She was a librarian. She made one of my kids cry, and when she retired, she shared that her favorite class was my kids. And I was like, well, you sure didn't treat them like they were your favorite. But she, after a couple of years working with them, she understood that all kids should be like this. They're not all the same. You look inside of an individual child and pull that out, which is what your theater program did.
Yeah, it's interesting because each student is unique, and there's so much push on canned
Yes.
curriculum, and it doesn't, like with my son, with your daughter, it doesn't work that way. That sounds like a lot of work. Did you get any help?
No. And any understanding? No.
Oh, that's
They wouldn't even let my kids on the playground with the rest of the kids when I first started. So this could be a whole other podcast, but I worked really hard to develop the trust, the co-working team with the other teachers, And it took a couple of years for them to really see it. And I did want to bring up, I know this is more about you, but I did have a student. Okay, when I came to our community, oh my gosh, here we are. We have one of our
Hi.
students, and that's okay. You know, I hate to interrupt Helena, but one of our students is here in Catalonia. I can't believe it. And she travels around the world making the best wine. And so here we are in Catalonia. Laura, thank you so much. I just wondered if there's anything you wanted to reflect on our little community, our village where you attended school.
Absolutely. So fun to reconnect over here across the pond. But yeah, in terms of our little community at home, I really loved that it was a smaller community. There was really great one-on-one with the teachers. Very small area. Both of my parents had gone to the school that I went to. My cousins were there. So it was very much felt like a big extension of family. And a lot of it helped really set me up for doing what I wanted to do after graduation and in college and in the workforce by having those connections and really feeling secure in what I know and where I'm from. And being able to kind of take what I've learned being in a smaller area, and it still applies just fine everywhere else.
Did your teachers acknowledge your personal interests and engulf your interests versus making it cookie cutter?
Yeah, and I think that was part of the charm of going to such a small community, was that the teachers really did know us as a one-to-one basis. We really didn't feel like student number 365 or anything like that. It was very much, they knew my name and I knew their name, and they kind of knew where I wanted to go, and I would be able to go in and chat with teachers of this is what I want and this is where I want to go and how can I get there, and always willing to chat with me, and it was fun to be seen as like a person and not just student number 3060 whatever.
It's so fascinating because you are so successful. You travel the world, and so many of our other graduates do the same thing, Helena.
Yes, they do. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's been really cool, and I think part of that, when you do have such a strong anchor in your home-based community, you kind of have a little bit more confidence to venture out and try and do a little bit more, not necessarily risky, but just more, you're not as sure of it.
Yeah.
And there's not a set in stone game plan. And so when you know you have that safety net to kind of fall back on, you're able to take bigger leaps, and you're able to kind of do things with a little bit more, with less worry, I guess, because you know you can always come back home.
Because making mistakes is part of learning, right,
Absolutely.
Laura? I'm sure you've made plenty, but you've learned through those.
Absolutely.
You also got into Cal Poly, which is not an easy school to get into.
No,
Yeah.
you went to a really high level college. Yes.
Yes, in the liberal arts department, but I will say, we still made it in there. I've got the
Still
sweatshirt.
made it. I remember your
prove it.
father
Exactly.
bragging about you when you were only 3. He was like, just wait until you see this one come through. We're
Yeah,
like,
one
okay.
day.
One day.
Once she
yeah.
learns how to read.
I know.
you guys are-
And he was right.
He was
you were a
right,
great student,
yeah.
actually.
Well, thanks.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Laura. And thank you for the
pleasure.
great red wine from Catalonia.
Of course. Yeah.
Best wine ever,
Yes,
right?
I-
Pretty
Helena?
damn good.
Yeah. Well, thank you
My
again.
pleasure. Have a great rest of your trip here, ladies.
Thank
Sure.
you so much.